We're going to talk about finding the volume of a sphere. And if you remember what a sphere is, it is basically just a round object like a ball, anything that's perfectly round. And so volume means that you can think of it as that we're filling it up. And so what's the room in there that we can fill it up? And so in volume, the formula is on the formula sheet, so you don't need to memorize it, but you need to understand it. The volume equals 4/3, so this is a fraction. Remember, a fraction is just a division, 4 divided by 3. 4/3 times pi. Pi is just a number, 3.14, times radius cubed. And so remember what radius is. If you have the sphere and you cut it in half, and then you look down on top of it, you're going to see a circle. The radius of that circle is this r. And so you also need to know what radius means. If you don't know the difference between radius and diameter, you need to watch that video on Facebook, so you need to know what radius is. Sometimes they might give you the diameter in order to trick you, so you need to know the relationship between radius and diameter. Watch the video, but in a nutshell, radius is half the diameter. So here's the formula. Remember, when things are written right beside each other, that just means multiplication. So let's say we have a sphere, and they tell us the radius is 6 inches. What is the volume? Well, they've given us the radius, so we just plug it into the formula. Remember, pi is 3.14. It's just a number, but we represent it as a symbol. And that's also on the formula sheet, so you don't need to memorize it, but you need to know pi is just a number. It's 3.14. That's what that symbol is. Times radius cubed. Our radius is 6, so radius cubed. So I always like to do the exponent first. So 6 cubed, remember what that means. If you don't know what exponents are, you need to watch that video on Facebook. So 6 cubed just means 6 times 6 times 6. It's this number times itself 3 times. It is not this number times 3, so don't do that. It's not 6 times 3. It's 6 times 6 times 6. So 6 cubed means 6 times 6 times 6. It's this number 3 times. 1, 2, 3 multiplied by itself. So what is 6 cubed? 6 cubed, you just plug that in your calculator. 6 times 6 times 6, you're going to get 216. So the volume is 4/3 times 3.14 times 216, because 6 cubed is 216. Now you just plug this in your calculator. How are you going to plug 4/3 into your calculator? Remember, this is a fraction. It's just a division. So it's 4 divided by 3. You read it from top to bottom. Don't do 3 divided by 4. You go from top to bottom. 4 divided by 3. Plug that in your calculator. 4 divided by 3 times 3.14 times 216. If you put that in your calculator, you're going to get 904.32 inches cubed. So volume, the units for the answers in volume are always cubic units. So cubic inches, feet, meters, whatever. And that should be a key, is if you have a question, a word problem that talks about cubic, feet, cubic inches, cubic whatever, you know you need to be doing a volume question. So that's pretty straightforward. They've given us the radius. You just plug it in for that. Make sure you do the exponent, and that means that number times itself 3 times. And remember, 4/3 is just 4 divided by 3. So 4 divided by 3 times pi, which is 3.14, times your radius cubed, and that gives you the answer. Let's do one that's a little bit more computationally rigorous. Let's say they give us a sphere, and they say the diameter equals 15 feet. And you're going to fill up this sphere, but you're going to only fill half the sphere with water. How many cubic feet of water do you need? So you have a sphere. Say we have this ball. We're going to fill this thing with water, but we're only going to fill it halfway. So how many cubic feet? Well, this isn't going to be large enough for feet, but you know what I mean. How many cubic feet of water are we going to put in the sphere whose diameter is 15 feet? So how are we going to figure that out? Well, this should be a key. When we see cubic feet, we know we're doing a volume problem. It's a sphere, so we want the volume of a sphere. So we're just going to figure out what's the volume of the whole sphere, of the whole ball, and then just take half of that, because we're only going to fill it halfway up. So we're going to find the volume of the whole thing and divide it by 2, because half is divided by 2. So they're giving us the diameter, but remember in our formula we want the radius. We don't want the diameter. So how do we figure out what the radius is once we're given the diameter? This is something you have to know. The diameter is 15 feet. The radius is going to be half of that. So the radius is 15 divided by 2 because it's half the diameter. So it's 7.5. So that's what we need to use for this, not 15. We need to use 7.5. So now we just stick the numbers in. 4/3 times 3.14 times 7.5 cubed, right? It's radius cubed, and it's 7.5. So you stick, I always do the exponent first, so you stick 7.5 times 7.5 times 7.5 into your calculator, and you're going to get 421.875. So now we just have a multiplication. So 4 divided by 3 times 3.14 times 421.875. You just put that into your calculator. What do you get? 1766.25. So that's the volume of the whole sphere, of the whole ball. But we're only filling it halfway. So we only want half of that. We only want half the volume. So how do we find that? You just divide it by 2. That's what half is. And you're going to get 883.125 cubic feet. And that would be the answer to this question. Okay, we're going to do one more that's a little bit more complicated. So let's say, again, we have a sphere and it's a tank, and we're going to fill it with water. But they're going to tell us that the exterior radius is 18 feet. But the tank wall is 3 inches. How many cubic feet of water can you fill that tank with? So what does this mean? So remember, we have a sphere, a ball. We're going to fill it up. The radius is 18 feet. So let's say we're looking at that circle. So the radius, remember, is from the center out. So to the edge, the outside, exterior means the outside, so to the outside edge is 18 feet. But they're telling us that the wall to this tank is 3 inches. So there's a thickness to this wall. So it's not paper thin, it has a thickness to it. And so when we fill the tank, it's not going to go all the way out to the outside edge. It's going to go to the inside part. So this thickness is 3 inches. So our radius really isn't 18 feet because we can't fill the tank all the way to the outside. We have to fill it to the inside. So to find our radius, we have to subtract off this 3 inches. So it's the 18 feet minus 3 inches. So how are you going to do that? Here we have inches, here we have feet. Now our final answer is going to be in feet, so we want to put everything in feet. 3 inches is how many feet? Well, there's 12 inches in 1 foot, so all you do is divide by 12. 3 divided by 12, you put that in your calculator, and you get 0.25. So 3 inches is really 0.25 feet. So our radius now is going to be 18 feet all the way to the end, the outside, minus the thickness of the wall. So we're going to subtract that off. And we're going to get 17.75 feet. That is the radius we're going to use in this question. So they've given us the sphere. They're telling us the radius to the outside of the wall is 18 feet. So it's like we have this ball. The radius to the edge out here is 18 feet. But imagine this rubber is 3 inches thick. So when we fill something inside, we have to subtract off that 3 inches in order to only get how much we can fill inside. So 3 inches, we had to change that to feet because we can't mix units here. 3 inches, 3 divided by 12 is 0.25. That's how many feet 3 inches is. We subtract it off, and this is our radius. So let's just write that over here. Radius equals 17.75. Okay, so now that we have a radius, we can solve this problem. Volume equals 4/3. Pi is 3.14 times 17.75 cubed. So we just do the same thing. This is more computationally, extensive, but it's just the same formula, same thing. So you plug 17.75 times 17.75 times 17.75 into your calculator because that's what 17.75 cubed means. So when you do that, I'm going to round it off, but 17.75 cubed is about 5592.36. Now we just plug this in our calculator. 4 divided by 3 times 3.14 times 5592.36, and we're going to get about, again I'm going to round it off, we're going to get about 23,412 cubic feet.